Okay, hi everyone, and thank you for joining us today at the Weaver Digital Corridor for Lunch and Learn. We have a really great topic and a really awesome speaker. Bob Adams is here, and he's going to talk about finding the right talent with the right skills so that you can scale and grow your business. Before we get started, I have a few announcements. First of all, we want to thank Bob's company, Matson Madrid Consulting, for sponsoring today's Lunch and Learn. So thank you for that. Also, we have a big announcement with Tech Connect. It's a big change that we're doing. This month's Tech Connect, as you may have seen, we originally wanted to host it here at the corridor, but we've changed that. So on June 20th, Thursday, we're actually going to be hosting it at Shell Ring Aleworks instead. Same time though, so 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. So I hope that everyone here and everyone watching will join us for that at Shell Ring. And then our last announcement is that SC WIT, which is SC's South Carolina's Women in Tech, they have started a book club, and since we here at the corridor are part of, South Carolina, we are joining in. We are going to be reading the book by Erin Dow, right? Deal is probably pronounced her name. It's a great book about leadership, and that's going to be on June 28th. We're going to be doing that at Urban Brew, since we've done a couple of our other events over there and had good success, and that's going to be at 8 a.m. But you can find more information about all of our events and what we're doing at our website, buforddigital.com/events. And without further ado, here is Bob.
All right. Thank you. So I do want to thank Jess and Angela, and I've been calling you Anthony. So Anthony, Tony, for getting everything set up. I met Jess at there was a conference back last fall. It's called the Growth Summit in Columbia. So that's where we connected, and it was, it was just a good connection, and I feel some connection to Beaufort, but I won't tell you all that yet. I'll get into sort of our content first. But again, thank you for having me today. We'll make this interactive as much as possible. So if you've got questions as we're going, just let me know. I'll try to address questions as we're hitting a particular topic. The key things that we want to cover today, and then we'll sort of, if we need to, we can sort of tailor it to maybe, like I said, questions that you have or maybe needs that you have as well. And then also this afternoon, I'm available to meet with anybody that wants to do. I've got a kind of a couple of time slots set up, like 1:30. What did I tell you, Angela? 1:30.
So we have 3 time slots available. Okay. So 1:30, 2:45, and 4 p.m.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to, just do a one-on-one and just kind of do some, some deep dive or some conversation, we call that a discovery session. It's not really a super formal thing, but if anybody wants to do that, we can dig in. What we're going to cover today, it looks like a lot, and I'm going to try to pack a lot of things in here. If I talk too fast, just let me know. Just say, Bob, slow down. But we're going to talk a little bit about what we call talent management and how people and workforce and all of those things, how you look at that as a business owner or as a leader in your firm. Where do you get started if you are looking for people? If you're like me and maybe you came from industry, you've got certain things that you know how to do it when you're with a big firm, you've got a whole lot of infrastructure, but when you're doing it as a solo, what do you do? Where do you go? We'll look at tools that you can use for sourcing your talent. We'll talk a little bit about LinkedIn, professional staffing services, sort of the ins and outs. Does anybody here do that? So I didn't hear anybody that's doing that. So, okay. And then we'll talk a little bit about what I see as competitive advantages and disadvantages to being a small business, to being located here in the Low Country. And then, for things that we might say, okay, maybe this is a disadvantage. What are some counter strategies that you can use for those? And, maybe the little, ideation or thinking on that. Talent pools and pipeline, that's where we'll wrap up. I've also got a couple of handouts, or a handout that has a lot of links that we can get you in digital form, or there's hard copies as well, to just things that are tools, whether those be templates, sources for information that I'll reference as we go through the slides. So we will jump forward. Just to get a chance to meet me, kind of understand why is Bob here? Why is he even talking about all this stuff? Lifelong South Carolinian, the pins on the map represent places that are tied to me. personally, I grew up in the upper part of the state in a very small town. Went to the upstate to go to Clemson. Met my wife there, and then we have lived in Irmo, which is a suburb of Columbia, for over 30 something years. It's like you like to say over 30 because it's like I really don't probably want to say how many years it's been at this point. Professionally, and this is the whole family, you can tell we're a little bit biased. And I don't know, I didn't get the memo that day. For some reason, I wasn't wearing my orange. I don't know what. So this is, for me, as from a professional perspective, kind of the roles I've had. I spent 35 years in technology, related primarily to the insurance industry. And when I say technology, I was not the pure technologist. I wasn't a developer. I wasn't a coder. I was on the business side. But one of the things I was able to do throughout my career was like get to try a lot of things, to kind of do pivots from being a technical writer to a QA tester to doing product, program management, process redesign. The thing that was key across all of these, whether it was with firms like CSC, that was about a 90,000 person firm. T-Cube was a startup in Columbia that I went to work at for 2 years. And and you guys are living it. I tell anybody that I talk to when they're, coming out of college, I said, find a time in your life to work in the startup. I happened to do it when it was later in my life, but I said, you will never regret, the things you learn from a startup. And then I ended my corporate career with a global firm, Capgemini. So I focused a lot on people, growing talent, hiring people in, managing people. So all of those things. And I kind of figured, I said, okay, this is my late in life passion. I said, this is what I want to do for my next, kind of my next chapter, which is, founding a consulting firm, talking about people, talent, workforce, all of those things. So that's why that was kind of where Jess and I connected. And that was why she said, okay, yeah, you might have some value to bring here. Talent management, just to set the stage, when we talk about talent management, no matter what organization you're working in, you have a process where if somebody is an employee, from the point in time you make first connection with them, whether that be, meeting them at a recruiting fair, meeting someone electronically via an interview or something, or hiring them, onboarding, all the way to that point in time that they leave your organization. That's what you can call the employee experience or the people experience. And we make it, I felt like there's all different kinds of ways you can look at talent management. If you Google it, you'll find some people say it's a 7-pillar program, it's a 5-pillar program, it's a 9-pillar concept. I said, let's make it easy. Let's go with 4, because I had to do something that even made sense to me. So you acquire people, that's bringing them in, onboarding, getting them into your organization. You want to grow people. You want to make sure they're engaged, and then you're managing people. So I made an acronym out of that just called AGEM, just to make it simple and straightforward and easy. But today we're going to focus on acquire, which is that first pillar of our talent program. All right. So anybody in here? Okay. So who in here has actually got somebody today that's either an employee on their team, or that they've brought somebody in, or is everybody in a solo mode right now? So Jess has. Okay. Anybody else? Everybody else? Bradley has. All right.
We use a lot of contractors.
Okay. And that fits in here. That's what we call like the rent term as well. But the first thing, that we say that people need to do is, what you want to make sure you're doing is you look at what your resource need is. So whether that be, okay, I need somebody that's doing work in my particular business, my actual operations, or do I need help in marketing? Do I need help in IT? What is it that I need help in? So you need to identify, document the need, and looking at that probably from these top 2 lines first. Your budget, what can you pay? What's your cost going to be that's going to be coming out and hitting your bottom line? What are the things those people are going to do? And then that's probably the first part that you have to start looking at, is how do you balance those two? Because if you've got responsibilities and duties that you're expecting of somebody that your budget won't work with, then you're going to either have to go up with your budget, or you need to lower the responsibilities. The other way you could look at it, another, I guess, lever to change there is, do you need somebody in a full-time mode, or can you use somebody that's part-time? Do you need, Beaufort's an ideal place to think about seasonal work. very, depending on what type of business people have down here, some of it is very seasonal. They are, they're during the warmer or the hot months. We won't call it the warmer months, but the hot months. And maybe that's when you need it, or maybe you need it just for a short-term project. You've got to scale up for some reason, and you need it just for like a 3, 4, 5 month period of time. We talk in terms of buying versus renting, which means, are you going to hire somebody on as a full-time, or are you going to take somebody on as a contract worker? And there's a lot of different things. We'll talk about that in the when we get into that staffing services. Think about and consider why you might want to contract versus why you might want to hire. And then for those of you, so it's like, so Bradley, I would think that some of the work you do, in some ways, you're contracting and servicing to people. Do people contract and engage your firm as like, or are you kind of in and out?
All those scenarios, actually.
Okay.
We do part-time, we scale up for projects, and full-time, yeah.
Okay. So you're both kind of a consumer of this, but you're also, sometimes you're the person that somebody is contracting to buy your services from.
Yeah.
As well. Okay. Other big things that, we all have to consider today when we're hiring people or bringing resource or talent in is your location. Where are you going to be? What's their work setting going to be? So that location can be, do you need somebody that is there co-located with you in your office or in your workspace? Or are you doing something that's fully remote? Depending on what the type of work is. And it's not even anymore, it's not even just a matter of just what the work is as to whether it does or doesn't lend itself to remote, but it's going to be a matter of, I know people that they'll have a firm that's like small, but everybody's remote, but yet they're all in the same city. So they can still be, physically in touch with each other, but they've chosen to not have an office space for that. So these are things you would want to, look at and just kind of getting your plan together as to, what is it that I need and how am I going to approach it? Obviously, the skills that ties in with the responsibilities and duties, but are you needing somebody that has X amount of experience in a particular field? Do they need certain certifications? Or are you willing to look at, you're bringing somebody that's junior or even somebody that's completely green and you're going to train them up? So those are all valid things to think about when you are putting together this first cut, of your resource need. So, make sense? Okay. So, the next, I guess, refinement that you'll do of this is taking basically two different snapshots and two different views of what you've got from that need perspective. So, persona is a concept where, has anybody heard of using personas?
Yeah.
Okay. So persona is an internal facing view, but it's like if you said, I need to hire somebody that does it. It's like, okay, let's say I need to clone Angela. You can almost say, okay, then I take Angela and she becomes the representation of that ideal job candidate. Sometimes it may be that you need to clone yourself. And it's like, you say, hey, I need another Bob, I need another Tim, that maybe you're bringing somebody in, are they a partner or whatever, but it's like, you need to think about those. It's a way to give you increased focus when you're going to market to find somebody. You go with the attributes that are beyond just your skills, or the experience, but you're going to look at what motivates this person, what kind of, what's their personality like, what kind of communication styles they have. Are there any other things that you could possibly put together from that persona to say this person's going to be a good fit, from the organization? Again, internally facing. The position description is going to be your external facing view, because this is what you're going to use to attract and inform candidates. It's what you're going to post, publish in a myriad of places that we're going to talk about today. It's going to focus on qualifications, duties, tasks, skills, again, maybe certifications, experience. So it's going to be that outward facing thing. So you're not going to necessarily go out there and say, hey, so I will say that sometimes, companies will say our values are this. So it's like you're subliminally telling people, we hope you align with our values. But these are the things that you're going to do in that position description. So is that clear, kind of the two distinctions and how we'd use them?
Yeah.
And performance, you can also leverage the position descriptions into your performance management process, because it becomes the piece of that puzzle that's like, you've already got those duties, you've got those responsibilities described. So when you're starting to do performance management with that person, you've already said, hey, here's what I expect of you 6 months, in 3 weeks in, you're talking to them about how they're performing. These are two examples, and these, I've got links to these in the toolkit. But what you can, hopefully you can see, here is that in the persona, we're going with things like personality, almost like a pro forma biography or bio of this person. You'll see they give you a name. Sometimes they'll do that. You don't have to necessarily do that, but this is what some organizations will do. You can look at their behaviors. This one, this one did have goals in there, so that you're getting a good feel for what, do their goals align with yours? One tip or a pro tip on the name. This one, you'll see they chose a name that's sort of gender neutral. So it's Jordan. It's kind of like if you said, or even Jess, or Alex. Those can be names that that you're not putting bias in somebody's head when you're looking at. You're like, oh, because if I say I'm going to go hire a Bob, then you might immediately think, okay, well, it's going to be a guy. So again, you're just trying to think of it like, just don't let any bias slide in there. But this is all internal for you or your team. The position description is going to be much more detailed. This one I couldn't, fit the entire example on the page, but it's going to describe, what you're expecting the person to do, what they're going to be doing the job, what kind of qualifications they might have to have. Another tip here is, it's probably better. This one is the wording that says, you'll advocate for good product design practices, as opposed to saying the ideal candidate. Because has anybody, I'm going to hide that little button thing. Has anybody ever met somebody that they would say that met all the qualifications of a job description, the ideal candidate? Does that person exist?
On paper.
On paper they do, yes. Yeah, you're right.
I've
Yeah.
met plenty on paper, and they didn't have the skills to
Yes.
do what they said.
Yep. Or they only exist in the job description too, and sometimes you'll get people that are like, oh, well, I'm not even going to apply because I don't, meet all the criteria. So, you can put as much of that in there. This one happens to have some background. There's some, thought that maybe you don't necessarily have to put all of that in there, because people are going to use LinkedIn. They're going to use your website. You don't necessarily have to spend this much real estate on a digital document telling them something they probably already read before they applied. Questions on position descriptions or personas? All right. So if now we've gotten kind of our tools in place. This is almost like, let's just call this the buffet or the menu. These are all the different places that you can, and the different ways that you can look at sourcing talent. And within each of these, there's, we can drill down into a lot. If we start with your network, a lot of people think of that initially. That's, their first thing. It's like, okay, let me reach out to my network. Absolutely, a great place to start. People that know you are going to know possibly your work style. They're going to be able to give you referrals as well. They're going to be connected. The drawback, just the quick drawback, is sometimes your network is not as broad as maybe you want to be, or that can reach all the candidates that you need. Especially depending on if you're in a niche type business, if you are looking for some very specific skills in a very specific location, your network may not be broad enough to find you all those people. But it is still absolutely, I feel like, the first place that you want to start with going there. So you're putting word out, you put the feelers out, you build the connections. We're also going to talk about how these people all are going to eventually play into your network. And ideally, you build your network to have all of these people in place and connected before you need to start hiring people. And if not, you build it as you go, but you keep those connections there. If you've got employees, Do you think your employees are going to give you good referrals?
They better.
That's right. They better. And why? Because that's
Because they're representing you.
exactly.
That's why.
That's right. Because they are. It's like, that's what, to me, that's always been one of the strongest things about the about the concept of an employee referral, is the fact that, you're kind of getting some extra coaching from your buddy that brought you in, to get this interview. You're like, don't mess this up, because you're also, you're touching my brand as well as yours. And even when you get to, they bring into the workplace, most employees, if it's somebody they don't want to work with, they're not going to refer them to you. Now, that doesn't mean it works 100% of the time and that it is perfect, but it is a great way to extend that network. With the startup I was with, we did a heavy operation of what we called, we took interns and basically we grew them into consultants over the time that they were interning while they were in college. And then by the time, that they had graduated, we were usually ready to say, if you want to join us full time, you can, we're making you an offer. But one of the key ways we did that was because it was that networking that they were doing. They were ambassadors back to their friends, or they would bring somebody in, but they wouldn't bring the people in that were going to be a flop or fail or whatever. They were only bringing in, for the most part, the good folks. So think about your employees, an extension of your network. Again, build on that. Colleges, tech schools, I just put the TCL logo up there as one example there. But, the colleges and schools, there's, some level of, there's going to always be that variation of how strong their career services and career centers and things are, but get connected in with those. So let's say that if you were trying to hire somebody that maybe, let's say if they were, technology oriented, maybe they're programmers, maybe they're network or server folks or cloud people, then you could be making those inroads to schools like TCL, Savannah, Trident Tech School, but also outside the other, even outside of our region here. If the people that you need are nurses, then maybe you need to start building, that connection in with the colleges. And you want to build it in, not just necessarily go into whether it be a career fair or things like that, but go in and do, just an information session. Schools love to have people come in and talk about the careers they're doing. So whether that be in a consulting world, whether that be in, the legal profession, or how you maybe are doing, how you maybe pivoted from one field to another, they love to have those kind of speakers come in, whether it be the professor or the career places. So I would say always try to reach those conduits, and maybe you find somebody in your network, or again, you double back and you find somebody with your employees to get you connected. So this is something that I have found. I think I was telling Angela earlier, it's like, I had made connections through the years with like Clemson and University of South Carolina, College of Charleston. But I even had a free group of student consultants that came and helped me with a client, earlier this spring. It's like that because they have a consulting club and they like to engage with that. So you never know how that could, how it could work out to benefit you, not just even in just finding those full-time hires there as well. So colleges, tech schools, again, job portals, the only thing I've seen them do a lot of charging for are these career fairs. And that's where you have to decide, really, I would say career fairs is like if you're a bigger firm, you need to get a brand out there, or you're going to hire a lot of people. Because it's not that I think that at some of the typical ones, it's like $600 to get a table. But if you're going to spend $600 for one person, or maybe to not hire anybody, then you probably either need to spend that $600 somewhere else, or you need to think about, I'm putting this $600 in investment because I'm trying to do something other than just find that one needle in the haystack resource there. So use the free routes whenever possible. Business peers, I consider this group, y'all are peers to each other, not necessarily all in the same business space. Other business peers are going to be your local community, your chamber of commerce, any other trade groups that you're working with. It may or may not even include competitors, depending on what your relationship is with, with other firms who are maybe doing something similar to you. So, so Alan, I'll ask you. So, like, you probably don't have a lot of direct competitors in Beaufort, right?
We have a few. There's 3 other jewelers in town.
Okay.
Pretty close with one of them.
Yeah.
We have somewhat of a partnership even.
Yes.
On the back end of things. Used to work for one. We don't really talk anymore.
Okay.
And then there's another one who's
Yeah.
He's not really that open.
Yeah. So you have to. So you're going to respect the boundaries of what those different relations are. But like the one that you are connected with, that's, again, it's a business peer. Another thing is that you may be competing with people for talent, but you're not necessarily direct competitors in the same space. So it may be that you need somebody that has a particular skill that can transition from one field to another. You might still be competitors just to find people in the talent space. But use those folks to say, hey, do they have referrals? Do they know somebody? And sometimes that referral is just, they may refer you to a place to go find some people, not just necessarily the finding of that one individual. Because one of the things I want to make sure that we're hitting here is what I'm trying to do is kind of give y'all ideas of the tools and things and different avenues that maybe you haven't considered before. So it's not that I'm coming in and say, hey, I'm going to go hire all these people for you that you need. But it's like, what are the things that I've learned through my experience that have worked for me as well. So the bottom, we'll get into, again, more of the kind of the technical view. So let's talk about, if you were looking for technology folks, code schools and or opportunity programs. So I use an example of Build Carolina. That's something here within the state. They don't have a specific location or a cohort here in Beaufort, but they do have, there's some access that Leela King, who runs that program, gave me. She said that they do like meetups, they do virtual things, if there is an interest or if you need to look for people. But even if they don't have a presence here, you may be able to find talent that's gone through their programs because they keep up with the folks that have been in the programs with them. They know what experience people have had. So if you're looking for that fresh green talent, this is a place to go. But also they're going to know some people that maybe have gotten some years and some mileage behind them as well. There's also programs, and the example I used here was called Perscalis, of what we call opportunity programs. A lot of these you'll see in the technology fields, but there are certain programs that are similar to this, like Year Up is one, and they will focus on more business people, not as much on technology. But what they do is they're helping people who maybe are coming from a position of being disadvantaged. Maybe they didn't have the opportunity to go get a 4-year degree, or they may not even have the opportunity to go get a technical degree at some point. So usually it's somebody who's had some number of years in the workforce. They are doing a change and they want to, make a different direction in their career, possibly becoming, a data scientist, a programmer, some sort of business professional. So these programs will also, they do the training. It's a concentrated period of time. Perscalis, I believe it's like about a 6-month window that they work with somebody. But they also have programs that transition these students or the learners into employees. Some of them, there's one that's out of Columbia called Create Opportunity, that they will even give you access to a resource for like X number of months free that is funded through the funding source that runs some of these programs. Now, Perscalis, I worked with them when I was at Capgemini. You are paying, when you bring an intern on from Perscalis, you are paying for that resource. So you're going to pay for them. But whereas Create Opportunity is one of the ones, and I can't remember what the window of time is, but you can also get some talent for free there, so that it's a way for them to get work experience. It's a way for you to try before you buy the resource and see how they fit. So got some links in there to a couple of those, but you can look for these types of programs as well. Perscalis does have programs in Atlanta and North Carolina. That's the ones I put the links to as well. That's about the closest I could find. They don't have a presence in the Low Country. They do some virtual work though as well too. And then the last one that I've got on this page is flex tirees and shippers. Anybody got any ideas? I threw out some odd terms. So anybody know what a flex tiree is? Is Les a flex tiree? All right. So Les, what would you say a flex tiree is?
I'm semi-retired. I work part of the time. I pick and choose what I want to do.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. So flex tirees it can be from the concept of, it's a person that you bring into your organization who's retired from somewhere else. It's also a way that some firms that are larger firms, that they're taking that view of, okay, let's retain this talent, but let's also balance the needs or wants of what that person wants to do, because maybe they want to transition into like a part-time role. I had a guy that worked for me at Capgemini, and he had because he and I were we were very, almost exactly peers in age, but he had actually partially retired before. So it's like he worked 2 to 3 days a week. It was a very flexible thing, that we worked with him, but you were getting the advantage of the experience, the knowledge, all of those things that you can get by bringing in possibly a flex tiree. Now, shippers, I just use that term to kind of bundle in internships, apprenticeships, and returnships. So interns, most people are familiar with that. It's like you can think about it as, all right, it's a defined period of time that somebody works for you. Maybe they're full-time if it's summer, maybe they're working X number of hours if it's during the semester. Usually they are a student of some type. Those can fit some of your needs depending on what it is you're trying to fill. But again, remember, you're thinking about these people are going to be relatively green, that may not have any experience, but it could be something that fits your business model. Apprenticeships is that next transition from internship into the full-time hire. In the state of South Carolina, there are certain industries that you can have apprenticeships. It's called Apprenticeship Carolina, and I probably should put that. I'll get that link to y'all separately for this. So there's Apprenticeship Carolina, where you have a growth and a progression of somebody across the career, but you get tax credits if you're the business owner, or if you're the business that's that you're hiring these people and bringing that in. So that's an offset for you. It offsets some of the investment that you're making in that type of talent. And then returnships are where somebody has, maybe they're not like me and Les. We're not, they're not quite at that point where you maybe are semi-retired, but this is somebody who's been out of the workforce for some period of time and is re-entering the workforce. So that could be somebody who has taken time out to take care of a family member. Sometimes it's a mom or dad who takes time out, while they've just had a baby or had a child, and maybe the first couple of years somebody wants to stay home, and it's a way to bridge the career gap, because people, we all tend to look at, it's like we look and it's like you'll see that gap on a resume and you're like, well, why is that gap there? Okay, this is a way to bridge that gap, because yes, you had a valid reason for stepping away from the workforce, but usually a returnship can have a defined period of time. It will also give you it can be done in the form of a try before you buy, because maybe you just say, look, we're going to do this for 3 months. You're not guaranteed work, but we're going to do 3 months, and you're going to get to refresh your skills. You're going to get current on whether it be technology or things in our industry space, and you're getting paid for it. So that's our shippers that we have there. Any questions on any of these, and any ideas of things that you guys have heard that we didn't touch on as far as like kind of key sources? Yes.
When you were referencing the business peers, it made me think of like online communities of peers, but
yes,
not locally. And they tend, at least in my industry, they tend to be way more open.
Yes.
Sharing ideas.
Yep.
Things like that. So same concept, just not just local business.
Exactly.
Peers, but like online communities.
Yeah, you're right. Whether, again, if you're looking at like it's an industry group, because it's those people, they're going to really know your niches. And some of those kinds of groups even have like job exchanges that they'll put up there where you can post positions, so that if somebody is in, let's say somebody's in Phoenix or Denver or whatever, and they do want to move, they want to like try a different city, there's a way to do it. Yes, very good for bringing that up. So, yes.
So, sorry to have to ask this, but
No.
I'm just a little unclear. are you a staffing agency? Are you a headhunter? Are you a consultant? Will you give me some context,
So,
please? Because I'm a
yes.
little confused as
Oh,
to
no, that's fine.
where
Yeah,
you're coming from.
absolutely. Yeah. So what I do is I call it HR adjacent. So meaning that I don't do like compliance for like HR. So I wouldn't be your fractional HR office, and I'm also not your staffing person. Where I like to play is in the middle of the field with the organization, helping employees with engagement, with their processes. So like if you needed to design, I just did this for somebody. It's like I designed a performance management process for them. But it's also sometimes designing how do you get that acquisition, because how do you go to market and acquire the talent versus actually, either
You're
doing
an
it yourself.
HR consultant, basically.
Yes.
Okay, because I have
Yes.
a firm that I support that definitely use your services. I was just trying to make it.
Yes.
I mean,
I should. Yeah.
The
I should.
attrition rate in most places is ridiculous.
Yes.
And, yeah, I was just trying to figure out, okay, how, where the
And thank you for bringing that up. And yeah, because that was a box I missed on the meet Bob part. I was too busy talking about all the places I've been. So yes.
So you had,
How are you?
I mean, maybe just showing my age or something, but like for the internships, especially right with like COVID and then a lot more things being on Zoom. Like, have
Yeah.
you seen like colleges move to like support something that's not local? Like it's one thing to be in Columbia and USC,
Right.
To, have folks come over. Is that something that they're more open to, where the student doesn't travel to the
Yes.
business?
Yes, they are. And I will tell you that having been, because I was with T-Cube and Capgemini before COVID, and then, everything, we did this great summer program in 2019 in Columbia. And then 2020, we were thinking about and planning, and then the world goes sideways. So what we found was that there are ways to do those internships, but it's like you got to change the mindset, just like you do with any other, any other employee that's in that remote setting. So I know for us, we took a pause in 2020. We had one intern that was a kind of a freebie we got from Clemson, because there was a program that paid for that person, and she actually lived, I think, in Massachusetts, and so she worked from there. And so we, all of her assignments and things were all done via Teams and emails and just phone calls and stuff. And I even have today, the intern I got an intern for the summer from Wofford, and she's in Spartanburg. And so like we do checkpoints on the phone, because she's also working a full-time job, and then she's interning with me for like 5 hours a week. So there's a lot of things. If you do the remote, it is doable, but you just need to, you just need to make sure that one, it's a fit, that they want to do it, that they don't, that they weren't, when they were going to find their internship, they didn't say, hey, I really want to work in office. That goes back to that whole business need. If they want to be in an office and be around other people, then they're not going to be as happy or as engaged as they could be. But yes, a long answer, but yes, people are doing the virtual.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just one of those things. Like we haven't done it yet, but that was one of our talk about. Because like the legal law in general, like does externship, internship
Yes.
during the middle of the summers, but we didn't know like kind of data point. Like, is it something that like student services offices would be open?
Yeah.
You're not in Columbia.
Because we haven't seen, any pushback. Now, I haven't been to the law school to get anybody, but we have not seen anybody to do that pushback with like saying, okay, just the local. And there's a young guy at Clemson. He's even started his own firm where he's starting his own business to like help people match interns. And because this is some of the things that we've seen too. Okay, you go to school in one place during the year, and then maybe in the summer, maybe you come home, or you want to, you want to go to another city, but you got to pay for it or whatever. So there's, it's a very broad thing now. It's just a matter of what you can manage and what you feel like is going to meet your needs. So I will design an internship program for you, so I can do that. Alan, you had a question or comment, an ad?
Yeah, comment.
Okay.
It's interesting seeing the strategy. Like this is a skill set, being able to source the talent, but also be efficient at the following stages too.
Yeah.
I think about marketing a lot, and it's like a funnel. It correlates so much to like getting people to become aware of you and converting them into a sale.
Yes.
Having that skill, and then I think like many business owners, think, oh, you just gotta throw up a job listing to get a candidate, and they wonder why their employee
Right.
sucks.
Yes.
And I see hundreds of jewelers every day complaining, why can't I make a sale from Facebook?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you suck at Facebook.
Yes.
But if you can get the skill, it's just interesting to see the strategy and correlation here. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's arguably just as important as any other business.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly.
Because you're, and that's why all of us who go into business for ourselves, it's like we've all got, sometimes you've got like that key talent you take out there to market, and then you're like, oh crap, I don't know how to do any of this other stuff. I didn't realize, like, I was like, oh, well, yeah, I've got to have a website. I piddled on what are the things called GoDaddy for like a few hours, and I said, no, I'm going to somebody to, I said, it's not like PowerPoint. I was like, okay, I'm going to somebody to set my website up. So it's like, yeah, we all bring those individual skills, but very few people, unless you're like a staffing firm. That if you're a staffing firm, then yeah, this all stuff works for you. You might know how to approach all these things, but that's why we figured it was good to share with everybody things that that we've all learned and experienced. So
Right on. I remember studying how to source talent, like that's what skill set itself.
Yeah.
And then I've had experiences where I've like onboarded an employee and contractors, and things just didn't work out. And then at the previous lunch and learn, Amy was speaking about how to kickstart the team, how to conclude a team, all of these other skill sets further along in the funnel that had never been on my radar. I was like, dang, no wonder those situations didn't work out.
Right.
I was a terrible leader. I didn't know how to kickstart the project.
Yeah.
Great. I was able to source a candidate, get a warm body, but man, this is totally not my arena. But it's interesting to see the strategy that you're proposing.
Yeah.
It really is like a science to it.
I do feel like, and 15 years ago, I would have thought this was a lot easier too. But just seeing, like, trying to grow a startup. When we went, so in Columbia, we went from 20 people in March of 2015 when I joined, and by the time we were acquired by Capgemini 2 years later, we had 125 people in Columbia. So and Bob was the one that I did. It was one of those things where I found that it was like I kind of fell into that because I got hired to be a consultant on claims, insurance claims systems. And then it was like my boss kept giving me, he was the CEO. It was like he didn't want to do any of this stuff anymore. He was tired of it. So he kept passing stuff to me. So yeah, it's like you learn all this stuff. And I would have never even thought about the whole concept of you feeling like you have to sell a job to somebody, but you do, because the competition is out there. It's like, you're competing.
That's how I see it. I'm like, I'm trying to sell a customer, and now you're trying to sell a person to become
Right.
an employee, and it's like,
Yeah.
they correlate so much.
Yes. And who's the fighter that said, was it Mike Tyson that said, everybody's got a plan till they get punched in the face?
Yeah.
And it's like, it's like we all think we do. And as you go through and as you manage people too, it's like sometimes, I mean, good grief. It's just the things, the things you'll see from managing people, the situations you'll find yourself in, it's just, you just never imagine. So until you experience some of them too, but that'd be a whole nother one. That's a happy hour, Jess. That's what we need to do there.
It's getting worse as time goes on.
Yes. All right. How are we looking on time? Is like I've eaten up all the time so far? Okay, good. All right. Well, I'll pick up the pace here. LinkedIn, just some tips on using LinkedIn. If this is where you think you can find the talent that you need, then again, you look at it as an extension of your network. You can do both free and promoted job postings there. So the free, again, if free will get it for you, then use the free ones. The promoted ones just pushes it into more people's LinkedIn feeds or whatever. LinkedIn, it is going to be a function of your network, but it's also your network's network. So if you can get people that you're connected with their network. If you can get them to repost positions and say, hey, look at this job, that Les is trying to fill, then you've expanded. It just becomes that geometric, I guess, or expansion or whatever. If you're trying to look, if you even want to have global reach, you've got global reach on LinkedIn. There's some basic functions. You can tag things for jobs. You can put the I'm hiring, banner out there on yourself. Take advantage of things like repost. LinkedIn Premium is a good option if it makes sense. I'll say that's just kind of like those job fairs. If you have other needs, or if you're going to hire a lot of people, then LinkedIn Premium maybe is a good investment. It's about $500 for an annual subscription. But if it's something that you can use from like your marketing, depending on if you're selling business to business versus if you're selling direct to consumer, or if you are like for me, I don't necessarily limit, I don't want to limit my client base to be just in Columbia. So LinkedIn is a way that I can be in multiple places, and get the word out about the work I do. Now, this is a quote from LinkedIn about their LinkedIn job posting. But anyway, they said 86% of small businesses can get a qualified candidate within the first 24 hours of posting a job. Again, remember, that's a testimonial quote. So they're saying you get that person saw it. Doesn't mean that you could hire them or that you could acquire them, but at least you've gotten the battle of that there's maybe some qualified candidates coming to you. Professional staffing services, the kind of what a professional staffing service does. So like when Brad asked me, it's like, hey, is that what you do? No, it's like that really is a I'll say a niche, selling perspective. And, it's almost like matchmaking because they are finding candidates for you so that it reduces your efforts of that search component. You're basically outsourcing that search. You will work with them. They're going to provide coaching, consulting on what your criteria is. You can use those tools like the persona, the job description, because they're going to ask you those things. And if you've already got them ready, you just hand them to them. My thoughts on professional staffing services is go local. If it's somebody in your region, I would say go locally. That's the firms that I had the best luck with, because once you tell somebody you're hiring, then you get everybody and their brother's going to come say, oh, I can find you candidates. So we used to look for a very niche technology thing, and we would have people from New York, Chicago, everywhere. They're like, oh yeah, we can find those people for you. A lot of times they just come back with the same candidates that your local people were finding too. Local, again, you're face-to-face with them if that's what you want. You also, I just feel like you're better about building possibly a long-term relationship with them. You want to get recommendations from people that you know and trust on who might be a good staffing firm. You're going to interview them just to make sure they can do the job. They're selling to you, but you want to interview them, make sure they're going to be a match for your firm's personality. Check their reviews, and I say get a partner, not just a position stalker. Because some of them, they're like, hey, it's if you think about it, if you've ever bought a house, it's the same thing. Sometimes that real estate agent, the less, they want to get you into a house as fast as possible. It may not be the right house because, the less time they have to spend with you, the further that, they can be on to the next client and get more commission with somebody. It's the same thing with a staffing firm, even though local and building that relationship, but at the end of the day, it is a business for them. They can usually provide direct hires, which are those full-time employees, and we'll look at the contract hires on the next slide. Some pros and cons. If you're using a firm that's local, they're going to know your local market. They're going to be able to advise you on here's sources, here's places that are also hiring, and this is maybe, ranges of comp and salary. They're going to do some of that initial candidate vetting and screening when those submissions come in, because if you posted something, let's say you post something on Indeed, or one of those websites, you're going to get a whole bunch of stuff in your inbox, and then you've got to go through it. Otherwise those people are going to go take other jobs. So it may be something that you want to, outsource as well. Background checks. Some of the firms, you can chat with them. They will do the background checks, but they will expect you to pay for it because that's going to be part of the fees that they're going to charge you. They may also do the professional reference checks. so that when somebody lists their 3, job references, they may do that check for you. These are all things you just kind of find out. You want to make sure that if you're already getting those included in your price, again, compare apples to apples. Some of the cons is the price point, because you are paying for this, but you got to think about what are you offsetting with that. They may also be sort of limited in their view of candidates because they are, I'm just going back to that same con, they're working on that speed of transaction there. Questions on the direct hire, because some of these, when you see the contract, you'll see some of the same things pop up. But any questions on direct hire and just that concept? Is anybody, so nobody here has ever engaged with the, unless you have?
But I had the corporate job, I had a firm.
Yes.
They're called applicants.
Yeah.
And we had an agreement. It took a very little time to figure out what I needed.
Yeah.
And we also had an agreement that if I kept them for more than 90 days, that I could convert them without a fee.
Yes.
So they were able to pitch it to their people who came in to file with them.
Right.
That if they moved into the job, that they were probably going to move into a full-time job.
Yep.
To do it. So we moved very quickly to the candidate pool was good, and I was converting a lot of people.
And that was so that was a selling point for them and for you to do it. Because what you hit there was, if you've got somebody, I think it must be on the next slide, but if you do that contract hire, some firms will let you, you're paying for that. You're paying a little bit of a premium of what you would pay if you were paying directly. But maybe it works for you because you need that short-term person. The staffing firm may give them benefits like the 401k, insurance, and all those things that maybe a small firm cannot do. They will often have people on their staff that have worked for different engagements that are ongoing employees for them, so they can sometimes source it very quickly for you. That people manager headache, you've got to manage their work, but some of their other situations you don't have to manage if you've gone to a direct. And since it's going to be their employee, they're going to handle those background checks and they're going to pay the fees for them as well. So again, you need to think about cost consideration. And then I had duality of engagement and you're not their employer. That's just something to think about when somebody is that contract worker, especially if they work with you for a long time. Sometimes it gets blurry to the employee and to you. It's like, oh, but you realize, oh, wait a minute, this person doesn't work for me directly. And if they decide they've gotten a better offer, you're not the person that can always negotiate with them about how to, hey, let me get you a better deal, or let me, give you a better benefit or something like that. So there's pros and cons. There's reasons that, this works, this model works. Sometimes it is just a matter because you need a short-term stint. You've got a project that is only going to last 6 months. So you need somebody for that period of time, but you get to try them out and buy them, and where was it? Yeah, like generally, some of the costs like contract hire, usually they will do like a sliding scale. So like if you keep them for a long enough period of time, then they're going to say, we're not going to charge you that 25%, which is kind of an average fee. Some of these numbers are like Columbia numbers, but I'm assuming they probably translate pretty well to Beaufort in the Low Country. They may offer a 90-day guarantee so that if something within that 90 days, it's kind of like it's a return. It's like, they may say, hey, we're going to prorate what we charged you if it didn't work as well. But those are things you need to talk about with the firms. And then that was just an example of some average salaries. That's data they can bring to you as well to see like if what you think you're offering is above, below market or whatever. All right, I want to hit competitive advantages and disadvantages real quick. Competitive advantages, what are the things that are unique to your situation that you can leverage? The first thing when you're selling to anybody is you. If you're a small firm, you're a startup, smaller business, they're going to be working so closely with you and your organization that they are going to see, the passion that you bring to the work. They're going to see how you work. And if you've done a good job with that persona, you're going to have that good match with personality. That also gets people engaged, gets them excited, because this is, we're almost at the home stretch here when we say, you're at that point where you're now selling. It's like they like the job and everything, but now you got to say, okay, how do I get them over the hump and say, yes, this is the right place I want to work? So I say the first one is you and your organization is your competitive advantage. The second one is the startup experience or a smaller business experience. It is very different to work in a firm with 5 to 10 people than a firm that has 250,000 people. So, Les, I know you said you worked for a larger company. What was the size of the firm?
More than 15,000.
Okay. And it's a different experience. I mean, it is, once you get to those really large numbers, you hate to say it, because I feel like that this is 2024, that we shouldn't be saying people can just become a number in an organization. It can still happen. Yeah. It's like we say it and everybody posts on LinkedIn, all this stuff, but it's like it can still happen very easily. People working in a startup or a small business, you get that perspective of getting to wear a lot of hats. You're going to get, if somebody's coming out of college, they're going to get to do a lot of different things, maybe, or even somebody that's like, when I pivoted in mine, I didn't ever expect I was going to be doing some of the things I got to do in a startup, and it was fun stuff. I got to go get interviewed for TV, and it's like, it makes you sweat a lot too. You get very nervous, but at the same time, I'm like, I would have never gotten to do that when I was just a project manager. So anyway, there's just all those other opportunities, that you can sell. And then you guys have the beauty of location. So you're in the low country. If you want the people to be here, it's definitely, it's got, I like to call it a life-work balance, not always just work-life, but, you've got that opportunity, for people that they can live and work here, but then they get to enjoy all the other fun stuff that I took from my vacation pictures as well too. So this one actually says, do y'all know where this one was? This one's here in Beaufort. The other two are Hilton Head. That one, yeah. That one I think we were at Plums. Is Plums still open? This was like 2 years ago. Plums is still there? Okay. All right.
Hey, Bob, we got 3 minutes left.
Oh, shoot. Okay. All right. So competitive disadvantages, just some things to think about here. Cost of living, a smaller city, startups sometimes don't have the big business benefits. So what can you think about to offset some of those things? Cost of living. If you're focusing on people that already live here, you're not trying to bring somebody in from another city. They're already used to this cost that we have in South Carolina, Beaufort. There's a table that I put in here that I was shocked when I started doing the comparisons. I shouldn't have been, when I started comparing that it's just as expensive to live in Beaufort as it is Atlanta. Used to not be that way. Quality of life. Also, you can source from higher cost of living locations. Maybe you want somebody from Silicon Valley. Maybe they want to come, retire where there's no earthquakes and you have fire season and all that. So maybe they want to come here. Small city can be an advantage. Beaufort is a top-rated small city. It's always at the top of Southern Living's list. You may not be able to offer some of the benefits like 401k and those things. Maybe you're not at that size yet. Think about how do you build that into your compensation programs as well. Okay, and then that's a cost of living table that you can look at. Talent pools and pipelines. Simply, talent pipeline, you've already got a pool of people that are screened. The pool is the people who have come in, but you haven't necessarily screened to consider that they're qualified. The times you may want to use that is if you are really doing high volume, or if you're going to hire another set of candidates that looks like what you just recently hired, in 3 to 6 months. So if you're only hiring here and there, this may not be something that you want to spend a lot of time doing as well. And then to wrap up, you have the candidates. Now what? You want to make sure you give them a great experience during the interview. Remember, you're selling them. You want them, it's like you're selling them. So that interview, as they're transitioning to onboarding, it's like, it's you don't want it for them to realize, oh gosh, this is a nightmare now that I've done the interview or whatever. So make it a great experience there. Communicate. I see this over and over. People don't get notified that they've not been selected for a job. Establish your employer brand with every interaction. You just want to make sure that people think of you as, hey, I did get that job, or they said maybe not right now, but you want them to be an evangelist about your business, not a terrorist out there, because everything is the Amazon effect. There's reviews everywhere because you got Glassdoor. There's all kinds of sites that I haven't even heard of that people will go out there and put rants on about, well, I had an interview or I hated this place to work. And to scrub that stuff, I think, is a nightmare. So that's when you go get Brad and see if he can work some magic. And then meaningful and memorable onboarding, because onboarding is what gets them into the grow and engage phase. So, all right. And
then for our
Yes.
For our live stream, that
Yes.
is our time.
Okay.
So again, thank you for joining us for Lunch and Learn. Also, I want to thank Bob and Matt's Madrid for sponsoring this event.